So, all right. So, I was so amazed when I found this story yesterday. I've been practicing it in an anthropology book by a professor of linguistics, John Colarusso. So the Circassian people live in the mountains of the Caucasus, and it's like a crossroads of Asia and Europe and the Middle East, and they were displaced in the 19th century by the Russians. It was really terrible. And still try to retain their culture in their sort of scattered diaspora throughout the world, and that includes Turkey. There's a large population, and Syria, Israel. So, well, let's just jump in. So, a long time ago, and a time that was so long ago, it was maybe between times, and it might even be this time, there was a people who were called the Narts. So the Narts were very brave, and they were not just brave in being strong and being able to defend themselves, but they were brave in that they were brave to live from their heart and to lead with their hearts. And in their land where they lived, there was this most precious thing to them, which was this beautiful apple tree. And it was completely gold. The roots were gold, the trunk was gold, the branches were gold, and the leaves were gold. And when the wind would blow through the leaves, it would shimmer like a golden fire. It was just beautiful to look at. And every morning, an apple would grow in the apple tree. And by the morning of the next morning, it would be ripe and ready to eat. And when someone took a bite of the apple, they would have prosperity and good health, and their water would be clean, and their soil would be fertile, and there would be good stories and a lot of laughter to share around the table at dinner. And Narts prospered in their land for a long time. And then one day, when they woke and they went to go pick the apple from their precious apple tree, there wasn't an apple there. And they were confused. They didn't know how there couldn't be an apple there. And so they gathered a council of all the Narts. And they all came together, the men, the women, everybody, trying to think this through, what could have happened. And I don't know if they did this, this is how I picture it, that they all had pipes, and they were smoking their pipes, and they were thinking, who knows, but that's what I think. They were smoking their pipes and thinking, like, what could be happening? And somebody thought, well, why don't we put a guard, somebody to stand guard? And they thought, okay, that's kind of sad. We never had to have a guard, but okay. And so they put a guard to sit overnight by the apple tree. And let's say that the guard was 17. And so he was doing a great job, for the first hour and the second hour and the third hour. He's really keeping good watch. Then around fourth, fifth hour, started to get a little bored and pulled out his Game Boy Color and was trying to get a new high score, and before he knew it, the whole night had gone by, and what a surprise it was when the Narts came in the morning and there was no apple on the apple tree. So they had a council again, and they pulled out their pipes, and they were smoking, and they were thinking, and they were talking. And somebody came up with the idea, well, we could make a big fence, and it could have the sharpest thorns that there ever were, and nobody could get through this fence with the sharpest thorns. And they all agreed that's a good idea. That would probably do the trick. It's kind of sad that we have to do that, but it sounds good. So they built this fence with the sharpest thorns that had ever been found, and it was tall, and it was thick, and it was great. And they all went to sleep, and they slept really well and really soundly because they thought that this would resolve the issue. And when they woke in the morning, much was their surprise when they found the apple was taken yet again. And there was no footprints and no sign of how it had gone missing. And so they came together again for a council, and they took out their pipes, and they thought, and they talked, and they thought, and they talked. And one person said, well, let's bring together an army with our finest warriors, and their armor they'll have their armor and their spears, and maybe in this day they would have their guns and their Abrams tanks and their Harrier jets, and they're all in a big circle around the golden apple tree. And despite having all that ability and that firepower, when the morning had come, the next morning the apple was missing. And now the Narts were really concerned, and they drew their counsel, and somebody pointed out, hasn't it not rained for 2 weeks? I'm adding a few details here and there. This is an oral tradition. I think the anthropologists recorded a very skeletal framework. Anyway, this is how I relate to the story, and some of you may relate differently, but the book is the Nart Sagas. That's the original version. And while they were talking in there, just a little, I'm out of the story, now I'm in the story. All right. While they were in their council, there's two young men in this case, and they could have been women, but their names were Pia and Peziash. And they thought, well, they're busy, there's no one looking after the tree. And so we should go. We should go and we should look after the tree and protect it. And so they went and they sat under the tree, and they said, now don't fall asleep, brother. And the other brother said, you too, you don't fall asleep either. Let's stay awake all night and see if we can listen well to if there's any footsteps or anything coming. And they sat there, and the older brother, Pia, eventually couldn't stay awake, and he fell asleep. But Piziash, the younger brother, stayed awake, and he grew tired, but he sprinkled water on his face. And he stayed awake, and he heard in the distance there was a fluttering of wings. Now, can you guys hear the fluttering of wings? How do you think they sounded? Should we all make the sound of the fluttering wings? And sure enough, coming from afar, there were 3 doves that came and landed in the tree, and they began to peck at the apple. And Piziash had his bow and arrow, and he took his arrow and he shot one of the doves in the wing and wounded the dove, and the blood fell to the ground beneath the tree. And the doves flew off, and Piziash woke his brother Pia. He said, brother, I've seen who has come and is the one who is taking the apple. It's these 3 doves, and they've flown off and they've left this trail of blood. Let's go after them. And Pia said, yeah, let's go after them. And so before they left, Piziash took a white handkerchief and he dabbed the ground and dabbed the blood on the ground from the dove that he had wounded. And he put it in his pocket, and the 2 brothers set off the trail of blood until they reached the Sea of Azov. And the gray waves stretched before them as far as they could see, churning and cold. And Pia stood there and he said, brother, I don't know about this. I think that those waves will freeze us and pull us under and we'll drown. I don't think we can go any farther. And Piziash said, I was thinking about that too, and I think how even our strongest warriors weren't able to keep our apples that give us our prosperity. And who will go if not us? How can we return home to the Narts like this? I will go, but I only ask you, please wait here for me on this beach, and wait only for 1 year. And if I'm not home in 1 year, then you can assume that I've died. And his brother said, of course, brother, I'll wait here for you. And so some say that Piziash pulled out a sword. I think he pulled out a wand. He pulled out a wand, I don't know of what type, and he touched the waves, and the waves parted. And he said goodbye to his brother, and he descended into the Caucasus of the sea. And he crawled over the seaweed and the mud and the rocks. And as he went deeper down the continental shelf, the walls of water were shimmering and undulating, great tympanic rhythms on either side. And as he climbed down to the abyssal plain, he saw an eye of a sperm whale that was descending down the profile of the water wall, watching him. And he reached the abyssal plain, and he saw the strip of the sunset up above with the yellow and the orange cirrus clouds. And he set off through the muck of the deep ocean, and he sunk to his knees and he sunk to his thighs, but he pulled himself across the sea floor. And in the distance, he saw a bright speck He didn't know what it was, but he went towards it. And the story is, well, in the Russian fairy tales, they say a story is short in the telling and long in the doing, but he made it finally to where he could see that the speck in the distance was a house that was brilliant white and sparkling, made of coral. And he went to the house, and there was a door that was a circular ellipse, and he climbed into the house, and it was a comfortable space inside, and it was a kitchen, and there was a table, and there were chairs, and there were windows, and behind him 7 young men came into the house, and they all looked exactly the same, and they all moved exactly in the same way at the same time. And 2 young women came into the house, and they were carrying a pitcher of water and a bowl. And they said, "You've come a long way. You must be hungry, you must be tired. Would you like to sit? Would you like some tea?" And he said, "Yes, thank you, I'm really hungry. Thank you so much." And he sat, and they brought a table with 3 legs, and he washed his hands with the water and the pitcher and the bowl of water, and he sat at the table. And on the table there were the most beautiful meats and seasoned vegetables and foods there. And there was also on the table the apple from the land of the Narts. And he was so happy to see the apple. He said, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm meant to be here. This is what I've come for. My business has to do with this apple here." And they were so happy about how candidly he was coming. And they said, "We appreciate your forthrightness. And we have to tell you, we'd like to celebrate with you. We'd like to talk to you about what your business is. But there's something that's troubling us. And we don't want to trouble you with that." And he said, "No, please tell me. I would like to help if I can." And they said, "Well, our sister, so our brothers and my sister, we would go and we put on dove covering. And we would fly to the land of the Narts, and we would take the apple from their golden apple tree. And the last time that we went, my sister was wounded by an arrow, and we're not sure if she's going to survive. She's bleeding." And he said, "Oh, I wish I could help if there was anything I can do." And they said, "Sadly, there's not. The only thing that could help is a handkerchief a white handkerchief that has been blotted with the blood where the wound happened." And he said, "I have this handkerchief. That's amazing. Here it is." And he pulled out the handkerchief. He's like, "That is such a coincidence." And he brought it in and dampened it and put it on her wound. And she revived, and she came out into the room where they all were. And Pitsiash looked at her and she at him, and they were both immediately taken with each other. And the others in the room could tell they weren't going to have any conversation whatsoever. They were like, just all they could see was each other. And Pitsiash was saying, "I'm from the land of the Narts. I can't live here in the sea. I feel that I have to go." And he could see through unspoken language that she too was wanting to have a connection with him. And he said, "Would you like to come with me?" And she's like, "Yeah, I would." And they were so happy about reaching that. And together they said their goodbyes to her siblings, and they left, and they walked up out of the ocean, out of the corridor of the sea, up the continental rise. And in the distance on the beach, they could see Pia, Pitsiash's brother, and his face. They could see his smile in the darkening air. It was sparkling in the light, in the dark light. And they climbed out, and they embraced, and they turned around, and the sea gently, with a great thunder hole, closed behind them. And they went back together to the land of the Narts, and it took them a long time to get back, because every town and a hamlet and along the way that they reached, the people wanted to celebrate with them and feast with them and sing with them and hear the stories of where they had been. And they made it to their home, and they lived happily, and Pitsiash married the daughter of the sea, whose name was Megazash, and they had 2 sons whose names were Yimis and Warzameg, who would go on to have great stories told about them, but those will be for another time.